we'll hop on the Monday night call, and it was fantastic. We had a great Hubert Humphrey led us in our focus, and it was very clear that we're going into, what he said. And this was a quote. I want to go back and write it down word for word, but he said that in his career, and if you know Hubert, he's prone to great visions, and you know, he'll go talk big in terms of ideas, but he's also very exact and very almost understated when it comes to, you know, expectations of business things. But he said that in his whole career that he never saw a year where there was more opportunity for wealth to be built in people's lives than there were right now. And that was, that just sent chills. It makes me excited saying it again. And so it's time for us to go act. And I want us to be a team of action. We're going to be a team of action, and we got some great things to go over today. Get on the horn, guys, and get your teams on here, because we're working hard to provide you with a tremendous information. Make sure you get your people on here. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got the great Tim O'Rourke to start us out with. And Tim, turn it over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Jody. Hey, guys. Good morning. Good afternoon. So it's interesting just to sit here and watch kind of what's going on from a financial kind of perspective. The Chair Powell was on Capitol Hill this week, and he testified. And it's fun just to I watched the interviews, and they just sit there and grill him about the economy. They want him obviously to reduce interest rates based on seeing the slowdown in the economy. They're pressuring him so that we can have what is determined as a soft landing. And this is spurring kind of what the market sees is about a 70% chance that we're going to see an interest rate decline here of 25 basis points in September is kind of what's priced into the market right now. We've had the S&P is up over 15% year to date. And historically, if you look back during presidential years, this is an interesting piece here, is during presidential year elections, you'll see that when a incumbent, call it whatever it is, the incumbent is up for reelection in those years. On average, for the last 6 months of those election years, the S&P will be up on average 11% on top of what it's already done. So if you just do the math on that, that's going to be the S&P will be up 26% this year. But this is another reason why an IUL or an index kind of product is really a great resource for somebody in the marketplace today. Also, I want to touch on real estate. I was reading a piece by Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. Kevin is obviously talking about something that's very near and dear to everybody's heart here, and talking about how difficult the whole real estate market is. I think a lot of us have some kind of touch on real estate ourselves. Either we own property or we know people who are in the real estate business. And I think I've talked about this before. The dilemma really is, since we've had a 3%, mortgage market back a couple of years ago, for many years, as interest rates were almost at 0%, which I don't think we're going to see again. What it's caused is a sheer, strangle on the market. The markets are so tight because why would you want to move and get rid of your 3 or 3.5% interest rate mortgage and move into a 7% house and go somewhere else? So, and then you have the cost of somebody going into a house right now. The average 30-year mortgage is 7.01% today, and you can get 6.5 if you're well qualified, but you're still looking at 3.5 to 7. Some people, because of their credit rating, are at 8%. So it's really caused a tightening of the amount of inventory on the market. And so Peter, I was talking to you last night at the office here, and it's what it's done is it's really kept prices elevated. We've seen prices move up since the COVID back in 2020 that have really escalated at such a high pace, and we're still seeing that incline of prices to that are still going, and so that has created such a tight market still today that anybody going into the market now has to lower their expectations of what they can afford. And so that's what's also, causing inflation to stay up. And then if you've been following gas prices or energy prices, oil has remained high here recently, well over $80 for WTI. Brent is over $84. It got up to over 85, with this whole barrel hurricane running through Houston and hitting the Gulf. They closed down the refineries, and then you still got that Israel Hamas thing going on, and then Hezbollah kind of drawing into that fight. They're trying to get some kind of a ceasefire over there. You still got the Ukraine Russian thing going on. So there's a lot of geopolitical kind of turmoil around the world. But the thing I want to point out to everybody is this is why we know we're going to have a correction. This is one thing I am 100% certain of, and I'll never say this. You never can guarantee anything, but we will have a correction. It's going to happen pretty soon. We're at over 21 price to earnings ratio on average on the S&P. The average normal market average is around 17.2. So you can see we're way overbought. This, high valuations. 5 companies are driving the S&P 500. They're all tech companies, and I don't need to tell you who they are. I think you pretty much know who they are, led by NVIDIA. So when you get, that kind of concentration, it just takes a hiccup, just takes something, and it's going to, it's going to cause that kind of reaction. But back to my point is, the reason we use these index products is we protect the downside when these things happen. And downsides only happen maybe 20% of the time, because you want to be invested in the market. That's where you're going to beat inflation. Because Jody talked about this last week and emphasized it. And I think Kimberly brought it up too about inflation. Inflation is the big one. That's the thing that kills us. That's the thing that's built into planning and helping people preserve capital. That's the secret killer. So we have to be aware of inflation, and that's the only way we can beat inflation is to be invested in the market. And that's why the markets work 80% of the time. All we got to do is try to help our clients avoid the downtime. So that's my conversation for today. Kimberly, I don't know if you're taking over or Jody is, but back to you.
Thank you. Absolutely. I don't know if I'm taking over if Jody is either.
Well, we got a couple of good things. I would just like to maybe start out with a couple of things real quick as just to show you that we have prepared. So give me 1 second here to pull this up and just kind of give you some timely things for the week, because I think as current as you can ever be. That's by far, that's one of your best things, is you want new information or current information. And so I want today to be very much a conversation. So we're going to be bringing up some things. And as we do, I want you to go and to be able to talk them through. So matter of fact, one of these things I'm going to talk about, Zach, I'm interested in hearing Zach's feedback. And he and I have not even discussed this. So we can kind of jump right into this, and that is the fact that the default now in companies is that they're putting twice, like they assume that you're going to put in 6% of your money. Let me read this. It says new hires are putting more of each paycheck into their 401k, not necessarily by choice. Nearly a third of the companies that use automatic 401k enrollment now start workers at 6% of their salaries. So what's happening is that these guys have these every year with a company, they're starting someone and they're putting them in there and they don't even know they're in there or how much they're putting there in. And that's an issue. Now, 2 things And Zach, let's just kind of bounce off this conversation, because what does that mean? One is, I kind of like it because if you go see somebody, they're already used to saving more money. You can redirect that money. It gets them toward the habit of that they need to save more money. But why would a company be doing something like this, Zach?
I mean, it's considered a benefit, right? And so auto enrollment, I'm sure there's some sort of a backside benefit from that for them. I can't answer specifically about it. I do know that it's become very, very common. We've
I'm
talked to
sure
several.
participation rates for the
Yeah.
401ks and
You gotta have so many people participate, and it also allows them to do different things for the company owners based on the number of people that are participating. So different type of executive things through that. So yeah, I mean, it's I agree with Jody. I think it's great, because if we don't have somebody talking to these folks about saving, then they're not going to save anywhere. So I think auto enrollment is a good thing. I also think it's a bad thing if they're not informed. But we could talk to. It's a great conversation piece. You know, if somebody, if you say, are you putting money in your 401k? And they say, I don't think so. And then you can say, well, do you know? Because your company may have auto enrollment. Let's talk about that. You know, that would be my way into that.
And that's the thing about it, is that, I wanted these people to know that information. And that's the purpose of this call, is to give as much current information as we can, because the other thing is that you may have somebody putting in above what they're matched, and you can show them what to do with that.
well, I was going to say that, right? As if they're auto enrolling in your 401k. I know we saw that with Emma when she got her first job after the 90-day preliminary period or whatever, right? Then they automatically enrolled her in her 401k. And because she's our daughter, she calls us about all things financial, and she's heard us say no 401k her whole life. And so she was smart enough to say, what does this mean? And there is an opt-out option if you pay attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for her, there was zero company match. Nobody was matching anything. So I was like, Emma, we're not doing that. Click opt-out. And she opted out. But most people won't know to look at it, or most people think, oh, great, I don't even have to think about it, right? Auto-enrolled, it's done for me. I don't even have to think about it. But it doesn't mean that they're matching you. It just means they're automatically enrolling you in a forced savings plan, really. So
Yep.
Even if they are auto-enrolled, it is a good conversation to have when you figure that out, that it's still the match conversation,
Yep. I want you guys to see that. Now, also, let me give you something that we're real strong on. I'm going to be pushing on this heavy duty. If you work a normal, let's say this is your full-time job and you're spending 8 hours a day on this, or your whatever percentage of time you're putting on this business, 3 hours a day, or at least 25 to 30% of your time in this business should be spent on finding new business. I want to say that again. Okay. The first 3 hours of your day, from 9 to 12, or whatever time you spend in this business, at least 25 to 30, maybe even a little bit more than that, should be on finding new business. I want you to think about that. So what are you doing to find new business? And that can be products, it could be clients or recruits, it could be recruits who become clients, all of the above. Okay. And that's what you to understand, that whatever market you're in, you better own it. And people around you are out, they're stealing your food. They're taking food out of your cupboards. They're stealing your babies. I mean, you've got to understand it. I'm going to give you just a couple of examples, and this is local. And I try to keep up with this locally. But for example, this lady, Cheryl Hickerson, with whoever she's with, props to her. She's got the females financing the future. That's what she's out doing. And she's out teaching people a little bit about how money works. And then you go take this other guy, and this gentleman's ready to retire. It's live webinars about Black wealth and retirement. That's a great market, depending on where you live. I know in Atlanta and in some other areas, I mean, the Black wealth is a monstrous thing. Right here, literally across the street from where I live, less than 2 minutes from me, they got a little seminar at the Buford Community Center, and it says Fully Understanding Parts A and B, talking about Medicare, can be difficult alone, but part C and D can be daunting for most people for Medicare. People are out desperately searching for this information. And listen, this guy would not go rent this place and put this up on this giant billboard if they weren't making money from doing it. So I want you to know how powerful that is, okay? And to show you how dead on we are, I'm going to show a clip from someone that Kimberly never thought I would show a clip from on a call, but I think it's very timely with what
The
we
Asians
did.
do so. That's why the Asians do so well, because they're being taught this. Like in America, I don't know what it's like in your country, but the top 2 earners in America are Indians by double white people. Double. The income is double. The net worth is double. And then it goes Indians and then Asian Americans, because money, investing, finances, math are priorities early on in life.
Okay, guys, with that absolutely, is what we do. Not that we need outside validation on it, but it certainly helps. And that's what it's all about. I was reading the numbers earlier, and there's a whole chart on this, but it's all about information. It's all about when that information was given to them. And where should it start? It should start in the homes. It should start in the home. We say get it in the school. No, that's what Zach and Kimberly just gave you a phenomenal example of this. Their daughter knew enough to know to ask that question. That was not taught in school. That was taught at home. And so all of us need to be taking care of that first. Then we want to work on it with the schools, but I think that's pretty awesome. Is that we're just, you should just be so invigorated on what we've already shown you. People are looking, they're talking about this. Now, one thing I want to throw out as a quick topic is that the inflation has gone up. We all know the new 6 figures. So that means, as you know, somebody who made 100,000 needs to now make at least 300,000 for the same standard of living. You know that. But I'm going to add another chart to this based off this conversation. You know what's not changed? We know salaries have not kept up with it, right? But guess what else hasn't? People still think they can save $300 a month and get the same results. Think about that. People really believe that saving $200 or $300 a month is somehow going to equal them being financially independent when they know inflation's taking, so there's a new number. I mean, I really think we ought to be coming to somebody's house and say, look, if you're not saving $500 a month, you have no chance. If you're not saving your car payment, that's not just a cute phrase. That's it. I like the phrase because it gets people to kind of giggle and laugh, but also be uneasy because they know that that's right. That makes total common sense. So you sit down with somebody, and somebody's average car payment nowadays is $500-$600. $1,000 a month car payment is not uncommon. And so all of a sudden you see that, and knowing they're saving nothing, so I think we ought to go show with that new 6 figures what that means of what the new expectation is. So any thoughts on Zach and Kimberly?
I was just going to say, it's funny that you say that. I have a client that we're currently working with, and they just bought a new car, and their car payment is $1,500 a month. Thankfully, they don't have any other debt, but they still have a $1,500 a month car payment, and they're not sure how much they can afford to set aside monthly to save for retirement. Period.
Mm-hmm. We did our podcast on Monday. We talked about the 50-30-20 budgeting scenario, where 50% is necessities, 30% is wants, and 20% is savings. And everything about that says that that's actually drifted more now to where the necessities is 60%, right? Because housing's more expensive. And like you said, your income's not matching with inflation, those kind of things. So it's very relevant to talk about, for sure, is that your preconceptions. And the other thing is, a lot of people think if they got $50,000 in their 401k and they're 55 years old, they got a lot of money. That's just, we think $50,000 is a lot of money to have in cash somewhere. That's not a lot of money. So to be able to explain to people, hey, and they're worried about risk. It's like, if you lost it all, how much do you make this year? I make $110,000, and you have $50,000 in your account, and you're worried about losing it. I mean, we got to go after making some money. We got to do something. These are all conversations you can have and say, if you lost it all, you'd lose a three-fourths of a year of retirement or half a year of retirement. So you got to go back to work in 6 months. So all those things are great talking points about inflation and the relevance of what we need to think and change about the way we think we're okay. That you said that about being uncomfortable. We don't want to make people doomsday, but we need them to be uncomfortable enough with their current situation where they're interested in talking.
Absolutely. And guys, we're trying to arm you with talking points. We're trying to get you to move to action. And I think this is a great thing. And guys, we put together a little committee and we want everyone's input, but I got a little committee going with, it's not a committee because we don't do committees. We had a conversation going with Zach and Kimberly, Rory and Andrea and Mauricio, and Greg Smith. We want him to put his information in here also. But this group is it's just a brain trust where we're getting ideas and conversations, and some wonderful things are coming out of this. And I want to have we need to have a savings dime. Because when you do a dime, is to create how much they need to have in insurance. That there needs to be an equivalent of this is what you need to be saving a month. And because even if you say, what's your goal, and show them what the savings, and what'll happen is, we know this. You walk in somebody's house and go, you need $2 million of insurance. They're going to jump like that frog in boiling water. They're going to jump right out. No way in the world. They may think they need 100 or 200,000, but by the time that we go through the dime and they realize that they got to have $2 million, they'll probably buy a $750,000 policy. Same thing's true here. You go sit down with somebody and say, look, you need to be saving $1,000 a month to have any hope. Because I'll tell you a defining moment for me, and we've been around this stuff forever, and I can go over it in my sleep, but whenever Raheem on the board here at the office showed that somebody 55, I was 55 when I was sitting there, had to save $5,000 a month to have $1 million at retirement. For whatever reason, it hit me. I was going, holy, there's no way on earth someone's going to save $5,000 a month. And so I understood that. So think about that, getting people to understand the power of it, that it's happening. We've got a great case going on right now with Dawn Mitchell, who's just an awesome new leader on the team, and she's doing a phenomenal job. And we got a big event coming up. She and I went and sat down with this client, and it was such a perfect scenario. They're as good of a couple as you'll meet. Guy's a principal of a school, wife makes $250,000 a year. They understood money in general, but they didn't know all the details of things. But they're at that point in their life when they're in their early 40s to where they're seeing people that have died around them. They're urgent. They're hungry. The families are out there looking for answers, and they're going to buy from somebody financial products. They're searching. So we've got to be aggressive in going out to make that happen. So any thoughts on that, guys? And then I know there's a couple of things, Kimberly, that you have prepared you want to go over.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about. Go ahead. I'll state my breath. Maria's got a question.
Good afternoon to all of you guys. It's not a question. It's like to add it to exactly everything that you guys are saying right here. We have in the office a lady that is a realtor, and the realtors right now are looking for this opportunity, like back and forth. But she discovered that it's not just the realtors, the adjusters. She just reached over an adjuster, friend of her, and she almost cried because she said, this career is dying right now. I'm gonna do this with you. The lady started last week. Yesterday, in just one day, they closed 10 policies because she already have the database of her clients that she served for all these years. So what I want to add to all of you guys in this meeting is like, let's go to look for these adjusters. Let's look for these realtors, because they are really in the look for this opportunity.
And along those lines, Maria, is that in the Florida office or in Atlanta?
Florida, in
Yeah, the
Humberto.
reason I'm bringing that up is because you said the word adjusters, and I don't think many people know what that means. You know what I mean? An adjuster, for what you meant, because I know in Florida there's adjusters in the real estate side of things. So tell them what an adjuster is.
The adjusters are the one that you utilize them in case something happened in your family, in your house, and the insurance don't want to pay you. Okay, so you look for these professionals, then they are the ones that gonna fight for you, they know
Right.
all the rules, so they're gonna fight for you. They're gonna make sure that the insurance gonna pay you, because this is
Well, I
exactly
wanted to
what.
make sure. Yeah, I wanted to make sure everybody knew what you meant, because I did, because I just had this conversation earlier. I just wanted to bring that up. But hey, guys, thank you, Maria. And along those lines, just so you'll know, starting next week, not today, but starting next week, I was going to make this announcement, and this will go right into it. We're all about strategy. We're making everything more focused, more focused, more focused. And so at Wednesday from now on the Wednesday 1:30 BOP that we do live, it's going to be called a financial professionals BOP, and it is going to be geared toward CPAs, realtors, adjusters, anybody in that kind of a market. So know that that's going to be the flavor of how it's going to, Peter, we're going to have it to be where we call it, the vertical integration. It's going to be how we're adding this into existing things. So just so you'll know, that call Wednesday at 1:30 will be geared toward a higher end person or people that are coming from a financial background. Just so you're aware. Same information, same BOP. Just the verbiage will be toward what you're looking for on that. So I was excited to make that announcement, and that's a perfect lead way into that. Thank you, Maria. So Kimberly, I'll turn it over to you. Yes.
Jody, I have a question. Will that
Yes,
bot be
sorry.
recorded?
I'll do it live every week. And
But
I mean, we could, yes, we could be, we probably will record one, but for now, just get them on that call, 1:30.
All right, thank you.
You bet. And by the way, when we do all these, it is to give you verbiage. Yes, load it up, get people on there. And we are also going to have many of you helping on these BOPs as we go. We're going to start creating great, presentation givers. But the purpose of us doing this is to create a perfectly running model for you to go recreate. I want you guys to learn over and over and over what we're saying, so you can then go use that and then go move forward with it.
I think that's
go ahead.
massive. The more BOPs you can give individually, whether it's the full-on presentation whipping out an iPad or whether it's a napkin presentation, that is more important in your business and in your growth of your business than learning how to articulate the North American or the AIG IUL. Because that's what we're here for, is to help you articulate those things. All these product providers have other people that can help you, and we're going to continue to do that. Don't get me wrong, but you need to understand that having a very good, well-rehearsed presentation that articulates HGI and what we bring to the people that you're talking to, not product-wise, not necessarily, right? You're going to get that. That's going to come through osmosis and through having people on your appointments and those kind of things. But knowing how to articulate why HGI to professionals or to, greenies or whoever you're talking to. So if it's an affiliated business professional like Jody's talking about, they're going to be looking at different things. They're going to be looking at, how does this add to my bottom line? How can I bolt it on my business without slowing down or not interrupting what's going on right now in my world? Then if you're looking at somebody that's a school teacher like we were, they're going to be looking at, how does this allow me to make an extra $500 a month? You've got to be able to articulate on the level that you're talking to. And I think that's what's going to be really important, is for everybody to get good at that conversation. And then the explosion happens. Once you feel better about how to articulate it, then you'll articulate it more often. And so that's why we're going to push people out of their comfort zone and get other people doing bops and other people doing presentations, so that, you know, the ones that Jody does live are for you to get on it. I don't care if you got a guest or not, get on it, listen to what he says, take notes, then go practice in the mirror so you can say the same thing to somebody else when Jody's not there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I was listening last night, and I texted Kimberly. I listened to James last night, and it's astounding. I mean, he can give a bop as good as anybody, but it's because he's been on every bop, and I've had him jumping in there doing it. James, you might want to comment on that, just about the repetition and how many you've heard, but then how many he said. And it's just over and over and over and over and over. Because it didn't start that way. It didn't start having the ability to say those things. And many of you are doing the same things, you know. James, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think the BOP is, I mean, any aspect of the business really is, it's all learning through osmosis. It's just learning through listening and then learning through doing. But if you listen to it enough, it's going to become ingrained in your head, and at that point it's just a matter of articulating each slide, very similar to what Jody does, you know. And just there's little things that Jody says that I hear over and over. It's like, boom, it sticks, and then you get that flow going, you get that process going, and it's no different than the training sales with your upline field builder. You know, when you get those first 3 to 5 IUL sales, you want to be with your builder and be attached at their hip and a part of every step of the process. So that way you're gaining exposure, and that is more or less competence. You become competent when you see something repetitively, when you read, when you rehearse, you become competent. And through that competence creates confidence. You cannot become confident first without competence in front of it. Competence will lead you to confidence, and then you're just sailing on your own.
Yeah, you know, and it's like when you hear, thank you, James, and when you hear Greg Smith, it was interesting when he first came on the scene, and Zach and Kim were like, who is this guy? Listen to how he says this stuff. He wasn't born that way. It's just because he was born in the system and gave it 1,000 presentations or hundreds of presentations or whatever it happens to be. And that's all between you and what you want to be, is the number of times getting it done. That's it. It's just that simple. Nothing, you know. Anyway, there's some great things happening, guys. I want to congratulate Robert Hadaway. You know, he had a $12,000 payday today. Pretty awesome. That's a total, you know, greenie coming in and, you know, just really building it. I know that we have, you know, that Taurus is on the phone, and Taurus had, you know, about a $6,000 week this past week. You know, I know Dawn's got, like I mentioned, she's got stuff in the pipeline that's going to be about $5,000 to $10,000, and on and on and on. So those are just people. Gail has got the pipeline so full, it's unbelievable. So those are all people that weren't active in the business a year, 2 years ago. Those are people that are here. What if we had stopped? And I want you guys to stop and think. What if we had stopped recruiting? What if you stopped recruiting before Gail? What if we had to stop recruiting before, you know, these leaders that we're talking about? What if we just stopped all new stuff, guys? That's the power of this business. Okay, so excited about that. So I know, Kimberly, you got a little case study you want to give a couple examples on?
Yeah, did you want to say something or no?
No, I'm good.
Yes, I do. Before we move on to Ebony, I want to say James said a word that I think is really important that we should all listen to and implement. And he said rehearse. I think more than anything, it is rehearsing. It is literally saying those words out of your mouth over and over and over and over and over. I think that's the one thing probably most of us are missing, is that role playing, right? And rehearsing with somebody. So find an accountability partner and say, hey, I want to learn how to do the BOP, and I want to work with you. So I'm going to give you the presentation. You can give me the presentation. I want to critique each other, right? The more times you say it, the better you get at it. Right. So it is rehearsing, not just showing up, listening, and learning. It's definitely that too, but it is rehearsing. It is over and over and over a repetition of it coming out of your mouth. So With that being said, Ebony, I want you to share your beautiful face and also unmute yourself. And let's just have a conversation about your client that is, that we want to talk about their plan and what she's looking for. And we'll just have a live conversation of recommendations and things like that.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And this training today has been really, really good. So thank you guys for that. I was talking about my client. I wanted to share something that happened to me this week. And because I think it's going to be very profound to what Jody, all of you guys are talking about when it says, open your mouth, talk to people. They need to know what you're doing. I had a policy delivered to my house, and it wasn't my policy. It was my next door neighbor. And I had to deliver a policy to a client that was not mine from a company that I don't have. And I felt so bad because I'm like, here we go. This is my next door neighbor who does not know what I do. So that was a huge kick in the face. However, after that, I said, you know what? I'm printing out flyers. I'm walking around the neighborhood because I didn't think of that market, just the people who live next door. And when I had to deliver that policy, man, that hurt. So everyone, like, open your mouth, talk to the people around you because, everyone needs what we have. And if you don't do it, somebody else is. I just wanted to share that. So with this client came offline. She's been following me for a while. She finally booked a call with me. So we had our F&A conversation today. And her biggest concern was her retirement. And she feels like, she kind of waited too long to get things in place. She has a daughter, which is 5 years old.
How old is she, Ebony?
Her date of birth is 82. So that would make her 42 this year. Yeah, so 42 this year. 11/2/82 is her date of birth. So her biggest concern is retirement, making sure her daughter is in a good financial position when she gets older, and also college funding for her daughter as well. She already knows what school she wants her daughter to go to. So she wants her to go to Spelman. So she said roughly the college tuition for Spelman is about $50K a year. She has a couple of policies already, but they're all term policies. She has a term policy on herself, on the child's father, and her mom and dad. She also has a $50K whole life policy on her daughter. All these policies she's had, I guess, since about 2019 or so. She owns her own home. She has about $300K in equity in the home, but hasn't touched it because she's like, she doesn't want to touch it until she has a clear plan of what she wants to do with it. Her mom and dad live with her. So she has the term policies on her mom and dad because dad still contributes to the household bills. Mom doesn't work, but dad still contributes. Neither one of them have any whole life. They just have those 20-year terms. She has a budget of $750 a month. She does understand that she wants to be more aggressive because she feels like she started too late. She said $750 is practical, but if she can find some more money somewhere, she's willing to increase that. She says she has about $40K in an IRS refund that's coming. She hasn't got it yet, but that's a lump sum that she knows is coming. She's a college professor, makes about $120K a year. On the side, she's life and health licensed, which that is a good thing because we will be presenting the opportunity. She's life and health. Yes, she's life and health licensed. But she only writes health insurance. She says she only writes during the peak season, and the peak season she only brings in about $1,500. So she's definitely looking to scale her business. She also has a W-2 work from home position at a bank in Texas. Her income is about 3 to 5K bi-monthly. It's not really fixed. She said it's really variable. And she said her monthly expenses are around about 6K a year. 6K a year during the school year because her daughter goes to a private school. Not in the school year, which is only in the summer, her expenses are about 4K a month. I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, first of all, huge congratulations to you for taking all the information. I
Thank
think
you.
that's where we have to start if we're going to give a plan, right?
Mhm.
If we're going to give recommendations and if we're going to do something more than just sell policy. And I
Right.
think that's a big deal. So I'm glad that you did all of that. I'm glad everybody heard you go through all of those answers because now we really have something to talk about. I want to share my screen just really quickly, and I want to remind you guys, because some of you I don't think know, in our back office, if we go to the left-hand side to resources, and we go down to financial needs analysis, and we click on financial needs analysis, I'm not talking about the one that we put in, but here, if you click on download printable F&A, it's going to pull up the F&A. And I don't know if you use this or not, Ebony, but every single question that you need is right there at your fingertips. Tell us about your goals. Tell us about your children. Tell us about your properties. Tell us about your liabilities. Tell us about your assets. Tell us about your insurance, both life and health, right? Tell us about your income, and then your final questions about how much they can afford to set aside. So if you aren't using that, that's what I use. Like I have literally like 15 of them that are completed sitting here on my desk. Like that's what I use because I prefer to have a conversation with my clients and not type in a computer, right? So I prefer just to use that form. So it is there. It is a guide for you. It will walk you through every single question and you won't miss them, I promise, if you use it. So kudos to you.
That's exactly what I use. So that's why I was able to pull so much information from her.
Awesome.
Yeah. As far as that goes, I want to remind you guys that this is also something that should be rehearsed. This is not something that this taking this needs analysis is a conversation. It's not sitting down and filling in the blanks. Like half the time, and we'll go through the process of taking this. And I got matched up by Jody with somebody yesterday, and had a phone call. And the rep that brought the person to the table was not. Originally they said, "Well, I can't make that needs analysis call that you got scheduled. I've got something else on the calendar." And I said, the idea is that you get there, you see it, you hear me do it, and you then can take this needs analysis in the near future. And he said, "You're right, I'm going to reschedule. I'm going to be there." And so it's about understanding the process and why we do what we do. Sometimes I think this is, if you refer back to the original Karate Kid, I call it the Mr. Miyagi way of learning. Everything we do is intentional and it has a reason for it. But if you pick and choose, like Greg talked about, this isn't a menu, right? You don't pick and choose. This is, you go and you do it all, and you follow that system to the letter. That's just an example. And Ebony, good for you, for using the tools that are here and using them the right way. And guys, there's even training on our Kimberly doing a video of taking a needs analysis somewhere, that if you don't know how to find it, we'll talk about it later. But it's a fantastic tool and it's not hard. And guess what? To take data, to ask questions, you don't have to have a single license. You don't have to have an understanding of the products that you're about to talk to. But if I can tell you right now, if somebody on my team gets good at taking the analysis and they can sit down with me and have 5 of them in a stack and we can go through it, then we'll know who they can close on their own and who they need my help with. So understand that process of taking the information doesn't require expertise in anything except for conversation and knowing why we ask the questions that we ask. So good job.
And just one thing on that real quick, just so everybody understands. 10 of you guys could go write your own needs analysis form and tweak it, and it may be better in one way or not. That is not the point. Understand, one is this is pretty good. It's after a lot of experience, okay? But besides that, duplication is what we're about. All this has got to be duplicatable, and you do need to have it, by the way, because you will forget something if you don't do it. So I just wanted to make that point on there.
Awesome. So now let's talk about this particular client and let's go through it. This is, so my first appointment is just like yours was, gathering the information, talking to him about goals and dreams and gathering all of that information. What I do in between first and second appointments, what we're fixing to do together here, right? And decide what we're going to present. And I'm going to just share this one more time. I'll always go step by step with these 6 steps. I always look at increasing cash flow. So in this situation, how do we increase her cash flow? I'm asking you, Ebony, how do we increase her
Oh,
cash
that's
flow?
a question.
Hmm.
By presenting the business, showing her opportunities where, you know, we can help through HGI and equity to help her.
Absolutely. I always present the opportunity in my increased cash flow presentation. And when I come back, I show them that I'm going to go through these 6 steps, and we go through literally all 6 of those steps. So I'm going to say, you know, obviously you can afford $750 a month to set aside. The biggest problem for most people isn't that they can't manage their money. It's that they don't have enough, right? Everyone needs to make more money. I don't care if you're an Amazon reseller, if you go out and start some lawn care business, sell on eBay. I personally think that what we do is one of the best business opportunities in the world. She happens to already be licensed. So for her, it is a no-brainer. She wants to expand her business. She wants to do that. So I would hard sell, not really, but because I don't hard sell anything, but I think it sells itself, right? But I would have a strong conversation there, because for her, it is a natural fit. But that's step number 1, is increasing cash flow.
I want you guys to understand, if you didn't just hear what she said and take notes on it, I hear this same conversation when she's on Zoom all the time because our offices are very close to each other. And I will tell you right now, she says just that. Everybody needs more money. I don't care if you are an Amazon reseller. I don't care if you start a lawn care business. Maybe you should come to work with me. That's always in there. And she drops that seed in this process. And then they come back around and talk about that later. But these are the kind of things that you need to be engaged on these calls. And half the time, I think if we just turn your camera on and put everything else away, you'll be more focused on what's going on here, and just make these things part of your day. Make these part of your week, because the things that you can learn from the people that are getting on here talking to you are invaluable. So take notes, pay attention.
So increasing cash flow. She's coming to work with us. We're going to make her a gazillionaire. That's check, right? We've reached that goal. Step number 2 is debt management. What debt does she have?
She really doesn't have a lot of debt. A few credit cards, but not that much. She said it's I want to say it's about $3K in
Okay.
credit cards, but it was very, very low. And then of course with the home, she has the equity in the home. So she honestly did not have a lot of debt. Her car's paid off, so she
No
didn't have a
student
lot of
loans.
debt.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
right, correct.
In that, I still talk about it, right? And in that situation, I'd say you're in a great spot. You know, you've got equity in your home. You don't have a lot of debt. You only have a small amount of credit cards. If they have multiple credit cards, I always ask them, what's your minimum payment and what are you actually paying? Because most people overpay all of their credit cards by $25 instead of one credit card by 100, right? And so they never actually get out of debt. So again, if we deliver value, right, and value is education, then they love us and they'll come back to us over and over and over again, and they will tell everybody they know. So even though I can't really do anything in the debt management section, I can give them a few tips and tricks and ideas. I always tell people to put their minimum credit card or their minimum credit reporting liability payments on auto pay. Everything. Don't think about it. If you have a $25 a month minimum payment, put it on auto pay. You can always overpay your credit card. But the last thing I want my clients to do is screw up the credit because they forgot a $25 payment, right? So a couple of just value things in that section. Step number 3 is emergency fund. How much money does she have in checking and savings?
So she said she had to recently deplete all of her savings. So she's really in a rebuilding stage.
So she didn't really say, but she basically has nothing.
Correct.
Okay. So I always, in this section, I take their annual income, and in her example, take it from all places, right? And
Mhm.
add it all together, what she actually makes. I'm going to divide by 3 and then obviously multiply it by 2. And you say your minimum is 3 months income, right? To 6 months income. And I'm going to tell her her number.
Okay.
And probably because she doesn't have enough monthly to save, to set aside to make a real big difference in that emergency fund, I'm going to tell her when she gets that $40,000 from the IRS, it needs to go in a liquid savings account that she can't touch. She's responsible for her parents. She's responsible for her daughter. She pays for life insurance on her ex-husband. She carries the weight of all of it.
Mhm.
She has to have money that she can access in case. And that's what that 40,000 is going to go to. So that would be my recommendation in that section.
Okay.
Step number 4 is proper protection. Proper protection is what?
Life insurance.
Life insurance. And I have this from you, so I'm going to pull it up really quickly. You ran a dime, right?
Yes. Yes.
And every single time I go through a client's information before I meet with them again, I run a dime, not because I can't do it by hand, but because I can pull it up to them and I can say, let's look at, oh, let me open it. Let me explain to you how much life insurance you actually need, right? Oh, I already had it open, and I'll scroll it just so her name's not showing on there really quick. Okay. All right, so you did a dime. Kudos to you. You're like the perfect student. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
But on here, you know, it goes through, and I go through this with her. So, client, her annual income is 120,000. I would add her other income here and rerun
Okay.
this dime. But let's just leave it for this right now. 120,000. You've got 15 years of income replacement. So just so all of you know, it's going to pre-populate with 10 years of income replacement. I assume you made it 15 because her daughter is 5.
Correct.
And she'd be 20 and she'd be an adult. That's exactly what I would do. So understanding how this works, it's going to take 120,000. It's going to multiply it by 15. And that's going to be part of her life insurance need. You also have the balance on her mortgage here of 137,000. You have the cost of future education of 50,000 per year because she knows where she wants her kid to go to college, and that's in there. That's going to pre-populate with 15,000. I usually just leave that because people can't wrap their head around $50,000 a year for college, but it's more realistic. But anyway, so you've done that. It's going to count 4 years for that. One thing I do differently here, this pre-populates for $1 million in retirement savings. I always make that a 0. And the reason I make it a 0 is because it's just going to add another $1 million of necessary death benefit on the policy and the recommendation. And I think personally, if you're dead, you don't really care what your retirement goal is, right? So
Right.
I just make that a 0. And it's going to take all of that for you, calculate it. You don't even have to think about it. So her total estimated life insurance need is $3.1 million, right? And if she doesn't need that $1 million, then we can say $2.1 million in life insurance need, right, for her. So I always run that dime in step 4 so I can figure out what she needs for proper protection. So let's say that her life insurance need is 2 million, right? 2.1 million. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to look at. I would always go run a term policy for that and put that into my recommendations, both on the dime and when I talk to them about proper protection. So I have a number there. So I know exactly what that $2 million is going to cost. If they have life insurance outside of us already, I'm going to compare those policies. And if she's got, how much did you say she had on herself?
Herself, 1.5.
Okay, so she has 1.5. So she at least needs another 500,000. I would look at the cost of her current 1.5. I would look at how long that term policy is going to last. I would make sure that it has living benefits. Like a lot of times I'm like, just send me the policy. I want to read it because they're like, oh yeah, it has it. I know that if you're with State Farm, it does not have living benefits, even if you tell me it does, right? But a lot of times clients just don't know. They've heard it, so they think yes. So I want to see it with my own eyes, if at all possible. But ultimately, what I would do. Mhm.
I was going to say her policies, all of the policies that she has is with Northwestern.
Okay.
Just to put that
and,
up.
and maybe they do, maybe they don't. You could also get, like, if she sends you a statement, it'll tell you what product it is at Northwestern. Usually you can Google it, and you could probably say, does Northwestern Mutual term policies have living benefits? They might. But regardless, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run, for comparison's sake, I'm going to run a $2 million policy here, right? To know what that's going to cost. I'm going to run a $500,000 policy here to, if I just need to add that piece. And I'm also going to run a $1.5 million policy here. And I'm going to compare the cost of our 1.5 and her 1.5.
Okay.
And if ours is cheaper, I'm replacing that policy.
Okay.
If hers is cheaper and it's a good policy with living benefits, leave it and add the $500,000. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. And she's open to that as well. She said she's open to moving them if she needs to.
Right. But and absolutely, as she should be, but I would only move them if it makes sense to move them, right?
Okay.
Like, of course, we'd rather write a $2 million policy, but if it's going to cost her more and not really give her any more benefit, I mean, maybe it gives her 5 more years if she wrote them in 2019, right? But you still have to have that conversation and just kind of weigh that out with her. Let me show you this too. I'll go back in here really quickly, guys. But inside here, under your resources, are your instant term quotes. You don't have to log in to run a term quote. You cannot present it if you're not licensed, but you can get an idea of what it's going to cost, right? So I always run the difference between AIG and North American on term to see what it's going to cost them, and that's what I put out there, right? I give them the cheapest one between those.
And that you don't have to know their health background or anything, because when you run these quick quotes, it's going to tell you the range. It's going to give you from super preferred all the way to standard, and you're going to know somewhere in that range. So
I always ask them if they have any diagnoses
Sure.
or medications or anything like that to know if I should quote preferred or standard or whatever, or if they're smokers, but it will give you a range. So now we're through step 4. Now we're through proper protection, right? We've covered the basics. We're building the foundation on our house. Now we're on stable, solid ground, and we want to put the walls up and put the roof on and make it exciting and sexy and fun. And that's building wealth, right? That's step 5. That's where everyone wants to start. But if we don't put the basics in place first, then it doesn't matter what we build, because it's going to come crumbling down. If I put that $40,000 that she's getting from the IRS into a market account, or I put it into an indexed annuity, right? And I put in either of those places, and she has an emergency, she's going to collapse the policy to her detriment and yours, because you're going to get a chargeback, right? It doesn't make sense. So when you do what's right, and we put that foundation in place, your business is going to stay on the books forever, and she's going to love you forever, and you're really serving her. So step 5 is building wealth, which is, again, the fun part. What does she have? What's her retirement income goal? Did she tell you?
She said she at least wants to have access to $1 million within 20 years.
Okay. So did she tell you how much she wants to make on a monthly or annual basis in retirement?
Yes, about 12K.
Okay. So if she has $1 million in 20 years, right? We've got inflation and all that whole conversation, but just basic conversation. Rule of thumb says that we can take 4% of our lump sum per year and not deplete our assets for a 30-year period of time. So if she retires at 65 and she wants to live until 95 and guarantee her income, it's not guaranteed, but probability says if she only pulls 4% per year, it'll probably last that long. Do you know what 4% of $1 million is?
40,000.
It's 40,000. She
Yeah.
can't live off 40,000. So in her mind, she wants access to $1 million because that's a lot of money, right? And she thinks that's the amount that she needs. But in reality, just to replace her income as it is today, we need 3 times that, right? Because she makes 120 before all of her extra stuff. So, but that's education. That's value, right? Delivering that information to her. So let's say she wants to make $12,000 a month. Our goal is to figure out how we can allow that to happen. I always ask my clients to pull their Social Security statement so I can see how much of that will be covered by Social Security, and I know that that's there. And then we will look at everything else. So does she have any old 401ks or 401ks or anything like that?
No, because her job actually does not match. So she
Right.
declined the 401k.
Okay. But she doesn't have anything yet.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
So remember, she only has $750 a month that she can set aside, right?
Mhm.
We've spent whatever we're spending in the term. Let's just pretend like it's $150 a month. Let's just pretend, right? So now we're at $600 a month that we can set aside. Rule of thumb in an IUL at minimum is that you want to take your age and add a 0. And so we would at least want her putting in $420 a month to probably make an IUL worth her while. So she can do that, right? So I would
Yes.
run an illustration using $600 a month. I would do minimum base, right? Minimum death benefit, because we want the cheapest amount possible, maximum cash accumulation, to then see what her income stream will be. I can promise you it will not be $12,000 a month, right? Because she doesn't have enough money to set aside. But it will be more than what she has if she did nothing, right? So that's where we start. And that's the only conversation you can have here because there are no other assets to discuss. So the other
Mhm.
recommendation I have here is, and I always point it back and say, hey, when we talked about increasing your cash flow and coming to work with us, once we have that income stream coming into your world and you're making more money, because that's the issue, is how much money you have, right? Then we'll talk about other options and what to do with it. The other thing about writing a term and an IUL at the same time means that you can convert a portion of that death benefit on the term into your IUL. I know North American allows you to do that into an existing policy. You don't have to have a new IUL. I'm working with Corebridge to get them to do the same thing. So then I don't have to have 2 IULs because that doesn't make sense either, right? I can just
Right.
make this one a little bigger so it'll hold more of my money. But anyway, so you have that option, or we can do a different account or whatever. But that's all we can do in building wealth at this moment. But I want her to be my client forever, right? So I'm going to say, as you make more money, as things change, we'll discuss more here. But right now, that's where you are, right? And then finally, last step's preserving wealth. What am I going to recommend here?
The wills and trusts.
I'm going to recommend net law. I'm going to say it's a $600 cost, and it's going to set up a will and a trust, financial medical powers of attorney. It's going to help you put all of that in place. It's on your computer. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, and it's significantly cheaper than going to an attorney.
Now she does have living will, and a trust set up
Okay.
already. However, she wasn't really sure. She said that she needed to get more information about it because it's been a while since she set everything up. And I believe she said that some of her policies were inside of the trust, but she said she does have those in place. So
Awesome.
in that instance, do we still recommend her to net law to kind of look over it, or what do we do from there?
No, because NetLaw won't look over it. They're a software
Okay.
program. They're a software company. So if she
Okay.
has that already set up, most people don't. So good job to her. If she has that set up, then she needs to review it with whoever set it up, or an attorney or whatever, and just make sure that it's still doing what she wants it to do, and that everything that needs to be titled to those trusts have already been titled to those trusts.
Okay.
So, and it's as simple as that is. Like, if you literally take those 6 categories and you think logically through increasing cash flow, how do we do that? Controlling your debt, how do we do that? Emergency fund, what do you need? How do we do that? Life insurance, the dime tells you how much you need, right? Let's run a term quote. Building wealth. Okay, what can I build wealth with, right? That's the big conversation. And in this example, we only have $750 a month, probably spending $150 on the term, right? So we have $600 a month. That's all. So it's not this big rocket science conversation. It's, where am I going to put $600 a month? right?
Right.
And then finally the preserving wealth. And just to kind of give you guys an idea, if we're spending $750 a month on life insurance, right? Then I would say, let's just say 600 of that is going towards premium. I don't know that it will or it won't, but we'll just say it's probably a $7,200 client. And with putting together, ultimately, what are we putting together? We're putting together term and IUL. That's it. That's all we're doing. It's about $7,200, but we've delivered so much value and so much
Mhm.
education. I promise you, she will be a client forever, and she will love you and tell everybody that she knows, and she's gonna be your teammate. So,
Right.
um,
I
question.
have one more
Yep.
question. With her parents, I mean, this was a question she had for me. With her parents, she has 100K on both of them, but they're both 20-year terms.
Mhm.
Both of her parents are in their 60s. I think her mom is 64, her dad is 62. Now, there's no permanent insurance there. And the reason why she says she got term is because if something happens, being that they help with bills, she wants to make sure their income, she has income replacement
Right.
just in case. But her question was, do I still get whole life for them so I can have something permanent? Or should I just invest in, for example, like the stock market to instead of paying all of that money that I'm gonna have to pay for whole life, should I just take that money and invest it?
Okay, so I don't like the word whole life, and this is just educational, right, for all of you guys. I like term and I like permanent. And that's
Okay.
what I say. Everybody's going to say whole life because that's all they've heard and that's what they
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But I would change their conversation and say let's call that permanent, because there are multiple types of permanent policies: whole life, IUL, universal life, guaranteed universal life, variable universal life, all of these different options, right? And for different reasons, there one might be better than the other. But I want to change their mindset from thinking they need a whole life policy to thinking they need a permanent policy. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in this example, it doesn't really matter what makes the most sense because she's only got $750 and she needs to plan for her retirement more than she needs to plan for a whole life policy on her parents, right?
Okay.
So when she makes more money, then we can have a conversation of what to do with those policies. And then, evaluating the current term policies that she has on her parents. How much longer do we have on that term? And what's the cost of them? And how are her parents' health at this moment?
Okay.
And then you can run a term comparison. If you can save money on that term and make it make sense, then
Okay.
maybe it saves $50 a month. Now you have $50 a month to put more towards whatever she's doing because
Right.
you've made sense for that. I know our policies are fully convertible, so we can convert it to anything at any point in time, or maybe not any point in time, but during that term period, we can convert it. So right now, while income is the issue, we can pay term because it's cheaper, and know that when she makes more money, we can either convert a portion or all of that term to a permanent policy, and then she can pay the more money. But if it's
Okay.
just for a death benefit, it's probably going to be like a guaranteed universal life that guarantees the
Mhm.
death benefit. Or I think one of the companies, I think it's like a protection builder or something like that. But in that example, you don't really care about the growth. You want to guarantee the death benefit, and that's what you'd be
Right.
looking for. But
Okay. Because
I
she's
would,
putting out she's putting out about because I asked her the cost, the face amount, and the cost for each policy. So she's putting out about $340 a month already with her parents' policies, her child's father policy, and that 1.5 on herself.
Mhm. Do you have a breakdown on all of that, or you
I
just know
do.
total? Okay.
Hmm.
You know per policy what it's costing?
She
Yeah.
gave it to me.
Yeah, so I would just run illustrations and
Comparisons.
see,
Okay.
yeah, and see cost difference, what it looks like.
Okay.
If it makes sense to replace it, then obviously that's bigger, more commission too, you know?
Right. Okay. All right.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? I know we're about 15 minutes over, but I think that was a perfect example, and I'm glad that you brought that to us to share today. Anybody have any questions on any of this that we just went through? Awesome.
I will tell, then maybe we can get a policy for the little one, for her college and everything else. Because I believe then she just mentioned that she have a whole life or something permanent, but I will review that account as well and offer her the opportunity to create the college fund for the little one.
And that could definitely be a conversation and definitely be an opportunity. But again, in my opinion, she doesn't have enough money. And it's more important to plan for her retirement than to plan for her kids' education. And so I would definitely make sure her retirement planning is taken care of first before we start diluting her monthly money in different things. Does that make sense? And hopefully, you know, maybe she'll get a scholarship, or maybe there's a merit-based scholarship, maybe there's a need-based scholarship. Maybe her mom makes more money and, you know, becomes a gazillionaire with us, and then we can pay for her college just with cash. But I definitely believe in saving for kids' college education as long as everything else is set up first, because that's most important. It's a lot more expensive for your children to have to pay for your retirement than it is for them to have to pay for their college education, right? So just remember that when you're talking to them. But that's a great conversation, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're over. So I'm gonna close it out for today and blow you God's kisses and say bye. So thanks. See ya.
Thank you.
You're welcome.